Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Yeah, you can see my PPT also, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we in our last class tried to understand about MIS, that is meant for Marketing Information System, right? In that system, of course, we look into three main aspects. One to be the marketing intelligence, and of course the records or database which is there with the company, and of course the marketing intelligence, right? So those are the three areas or three aspects where the information can be processed. So out of what that we have spoken, the marketing research to be a very important one for the reason that for the particular purpose, the information is being collected or data is being collected and processed. And this is a vital activity if the organization wants to be successful in its marketing aspect, right? So the marketing research process is said to be very important. And therefore, we have so far, or what that we have gone through, we were able to understand the importance of marketing research. And now we come to the fact that the marketing research is a process where step by step activities are there. We have to move into those activities, and that is been commenced with the problem definition, because without the problem definition, we cannot, I mean, without knowing about what is lacking with us, or without knowing about what is the problem with the marketing aspect, or without knowing about what really that the need that we are going to fulfill, right? We may not be able to start our process in a very effective way, right? So once the problem definition has been uh, done, then we go on how possible that the problem can be approached. There are many approaches. So one can be an analytical approach, one can be research questions. So there are a number of approaches. Lately, we will come. Then, once that approach has been decided, we can go on research design. That is how to conduct about the particular research, right? So that is equivalent to research methodology. And then, once that we have set aside the blueprint how to conduct about the research, we get into the field work, and the data is being collected. And once the data has been obtained by, then we are preparing about the data, because we have to code it, we have to find out the missing values, and there have to be some rectification. Then the analysis is being performed, and from that we can write about the report. And of course, in some instances, the report has to be presented. So this is how we really move into. This is the steps involved in the marketing research process. I think I have already gone through, but anyway, in a very deeper way, if we are going to have some association with the steps. The first one to be the problem definition. So, really, in the problem definition, what that we are doing about is from the general marketing problem that we are identifying its specific components. Because now, say for an instance, if the sales have dropped, that of course is a general problem. But of course, we are not really known what is the implied facts that is contributing towards that. So, in this case, now we have to define about what is the general problem, as well as what can be the sub-ones, right? So, sub-ones may be because of the competitors, right? Some competitors' actions had been more fruitful than the actions that we have implemented, or it can be the consumer preferences changing about. They may not need our product, they have some alternative products, right? So the sales has decreased. That is, of course, the general problem. But what that we have to find out is what has been the causation for that. So regarding of finding of the causation, we have to put it that as a problem, whether this has been because of the competitor's action or whether it has been of the changes happen on the consumer's preferences, right? So now the problem of the sales decrease or the sales declinement has been sub into two problems as I specifically mentioned. Right. So in the problem definition, this is what the process really involved with. We cannot confine ourselves with a general problem faced by, but we have to put it into some components. Right. So the components is putting into specific components is what that we are going to do by this. Okay. And it is said to be when marketing research problem has been clearly defined only, we can design the particular study and conduct those study in a proper way. If problem is not defined properly, then we may not know where to start and where to end, what sort of information to collect, right? How the analysis to be done, right? There, the subsequent steps involved depends on the problem definition, right? So, in this juncture, we can say this to be with a very essential one, right? It is also said to be inadequate problem definition will lead to a failure of marketing research project, right? So if the first process have not been carried out properly, the subsequent process, even that you can execute in a very systematic way, that won't give us a results, or the results that we get through that may not be matching with the problem that we are having, right? So, in this situation, we consider that the problem definitions to be very important. And not only that, better communication and more involvement in the problem definition, right, will be helping us, or that will be having about a support on getting about the usefulness of the research, right? So if the problem is being defined and that to be communicated, and that process will be helping us to make use of the research to a more effective way, right? So through these reasons that have been listed out, we come to know the problem definition seems to be very, very important in the marketing research process, right? So I think you would have got it, right? And when you talk about the problem definition, and the second one to be how we are going to approach about, right, the particular problem, right? Of course, lately we will be very concerned about that, but actually. Regarding of the problem definition, now the first step when you take, as I said, that to be very important one. No? So, how it would be possible for us to define or find out the components of the problems that we are facing? So, there have to be some what you call support or some method of approaching, rather than approaching, some way of defining about the problem. Okay, so for that we can get the support of these particular areas, right? One to be you have to discuss with the decision maker. Now whoever is involved in making about the decision, that the person has to have the information, right? So information, I mean through marketing research, ultimate that we get about the information, the outcome of the marketing research is information. Now, to whom that information is wanted, that is wanted to the decision maker, right? So, it would be better that we have a discussion with the decision maker so that in what perspective the decision maker is looking the problem, we may be able to understand. So, that will be giving us some idea, right? What is the way that the person involved in the decision making is looking at the problem, right? So that is also one way for us to define. Then we may have some interviews with experts, right? So maybe in the market, maybe in the industry, maybe in the organization, there are certain experts or some persons who are very familiar with these areas, who can give more insights into that. With them, it is better to have a discussion or better to interview them and get about their expertise, right? So their knowledge, the way that they are looking at the problem, the skill that they are applying over, the attitude that they have towards the problem, many things that you may able to get from the discussion or the interviews that you are having with the experts. So there in the market also there will be experts. In the industry also, people are there. And if not, then we may go into secondary data analysis, right? So secondary data analysis, in the sense, the data that is already existing, that is what we call it as a secondary data. Already the data exists. This has been collected for some other purpose, but the information is available. So from the information, we may be able, from the secondary information, we can really, what you call, really define about what the problem that the organization is facing, because we have some secondary data with us. Now, we can see in the past, the sales has been increasing. All of a sudden, the inflation has gone up, and the consequences of the inflation, the sales has dropped, right? So we know something to do with inflation. So inflation also to be a problem. And even there would have been consumer or customer service conducted. So from there would have been some information obtained, so which says that because of the consumers are open to access the information, they are what you call have more choices over, right? So earlier days, of course, we were limited with information. Whatever that is available closer to us or close by, then we try to purchase. But nowadays, of course, the consumers is not in that what you call situation where that the person or the consumer have access to many information, right? Even at the local level, at the national level, at the international level, the consumer knows who are the alternative people, so who are the marketers who can give the products to us, right? So maybe from the data collected or information that has already been obtained, we come to know, because that the information is available, the consumer's preference has changed, right? So whether that to be a problem, and sometimes there would have been a comparative studies also conducted with in order to find out who is having a market share higher in the marketplace, or whether one is better off than the other person, some sort of information. So that is through the secondary data you come to know what is the components of the problems. And if not, then there is qualitative research. There is a difference between quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative, of course, it is mainly involved with numbers and facts. That is what I was earlier also referring about, where that you quantify, right? Whatever information that you get, you quantify it. Now, say for an instance, satisfaction, the level of satisfaction. So, from 1 to 5, you put the numbers, lower satisfaction to the higher satisfaction. So, very low satisfaction to be denoted by 1, right? Lower satisfaction to be denoted by 2, right? Moderate satisfaction to be 3, Then satisfaction to be 4, and maybe very satisfaction or very satisfied to be denoted as 5. Right? Now, the qualitative data, what is the qualitative data? That is regarding of the satisfaction. Now, what regarding of the satisfaction, we are quantifying that into numbers. So, when the questionnaire is provided, people, depending on what is the feeling that they are having, they are going to mark the number, right? And we take about the numbers into the calculations or into the tabulation. So, of course, when Excel is available, then we can get all the respondents, right? What you call values, and from the values, we will come to know whether most of the people are satisfied or not satisfied or having about the moderation, whatever. Right? But the thing here is quantitative research is converting, I mean, the facts or we'll say the feelings or maybe the realities into numbers. But qualitative research, of course, is not that. We are looking into or we are researching into the statements which are being given, right? It is not conversion or not actually try to convert that. There is, of course, a limitation of having the quantitative research because now what that we have intended only we are quantifying. It is not open to the consumers to come out with what that they are thinking about. But qualitative research, of course, will be open most of the time. That to be a focused discussion or that to be an interview taken. Sometimes it may be even observations, right? So by many ways, we are trying to capture the real data, right? We are trying to have our maximum to concentrate on the data or on the information as it is, not to like make it as a quantitative and do about the analysis, and from the analysis we are turning that into a qualitative form, right? So qualitative research is also a good way for us to define about the problem because we can really explore into an actual fact, right? So in order to properly define about the problem, these are some of the supports that we can have, right? So based on this, and also with the environmental context, right? So this is of course the idea that we are getting, and that on or that in relation to the environment, because we know everything is connected with the environment, right? In what ways those are being connected is really a matter for us. Now, say for an instance, our sales are being decreasing. Maybe there is a consumer preference being changed. That could be also a problem. But at the same time, there is economical crisis also, right? So, whatever problems that we may like to face it about, that will have some relationship or that will be related with the environment also as well, right? So, therefore, we are taking that also into consideration, and of course, this problem definition is being made. Right? And apart from that, right, the problem is turned into management decision problem, right? Though it is a problem as common or problem in general, we are turning that into a management decision problem for the reason we know that we have to make about the decision for the situation, right? So it is better for us to turn that rather than having as it is, to turn that as a management decision problem. And from that, you can have the marketing research problem. So once it is the management decision problem, of course, this is going to be confined or the scope is going to be limited with the organization itself or it can be defined or limited for the industry itself. Right? So in that juncture, this general problem is turned into a management decision problem. And since that we are going to conduct about a marketing research, then of course it has to be turned into a marketing research problem, because the facts that we are going to find out will be relevant with the marketing aspect. And marketing aspect, of course, is not a smaller scope, right? It is, of course, a wider scope. So we have to find out this problem again turn into a marketing research problem, right? So there is a lengthier step involved even in the first stage itself, right? So it's not, though it looks like that we have some task involved, environmental context, right? The problem definition, but ultimately that to be turned into a marketing research problem, of course, we have to be very concerned, right? Then at the second step, what we are doing is now how that we can approach the problem. So there have to be some sort of an analytical, right, way of approaching the particular problem. So as we have many what you call way to approach, and those ways when we look into, finally we can decide on which way to approach about the problem. Right now, see that there is option available for us to approach. One to be the analytical framework and models, right? So we may, I mean, you would have sometimes right experience, or sometimes you would have read also. There are some models like dependent, independent, variable. To that extent, you can get models. So now, say if the sales is decreasing, so sales to be a dependent variable, and in the independent variable level, you can see about the customer preference, and another variable or another independent factor to be the competitor's action, and even you can have another variable as an independent variables. So the relationship of the independent and dependent, mostly it is what we find out from the models, right? So that is moving into an analytical way. That is also one approach to look into. So the problem that I was earlier specifying, the sales has been decreased, right? So the sales to be decreased, now we are finding out uh, what would be the causations of that, right? What has been caused to that, right? So now we are looking into the customer side, we are looking into the competitor side, right? Even it can be looked by the particular economical side also as well, right? That depends on the model that you are selecting about, right? So that is analytical. Then there may be research questions and hypotheses formulated. Right now, the same example, if we take regarding of the sales, we can put the question whether the sales has decreased of the competitor's action, right? So whether the sales has gone down because, or whether the competitor's action had any impact on the sales decrease, right? So that is one question. Or you can ask whether the consumer's preference change have had an impact on the sales declinement or sales decrease, right? So there can be research questions also formulated, and based on the research questions, that you can come into some tentative answers. That is what we call it as hypothesis. Have you studied about hypothesis? You are finished with the business statistics, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, no? So you know the meaning of hypothesis. Okay, now the hypothesis, of course, is what it is about a statement and it is, of course, a tentative conclusion that we are having. So this is a causation of that. That is a tentative conclusion that we are having at the beginning. And then after the research is being conducted, or while that the research is being proceeding further, we find out whether the hypothesis that we have formulated to be true or false. That is, accepting of the hypothesis and rejecting of the hypothesis. So there, you would have already learned about there to be a null hypothesis and that to be alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis is the hypothesis that we are formulating for the research purpose, right? And the null is, since that we cannot test the null since that we cannot test the alternative hypothesis, we are formulating the null hypothesis, and the null hypothesis is being tested, right? So in that way also we may approach the particular problem, right? And even that we can have for the specification of the information needed. Now, regarding of this problem, this is mainly like we approach that in a qualitative way, that we try to acquire information as much as possible, right? So by interviewing them or by having a dialogue with them, right, from their like response. Now, say you are asking a question, and from the answer of the respondent, further based on that answer, that you are formulating another question. So there is a connectivity. Then and there only that you are formulating or you are forming the questions and asking. But if it is a quantitative research, then of course you would have already listed out what are the questions and what are the answers that we are going to get regarding of that. But in the qualitative one, we want information to be particularly obtained, which is very much focused on the research itself. Right? So this is the approach to the problem, and at the tip 3, that we have a research design, right? So I think these things we can define more specifically, right? So task involved in the problem definition. I'm just going with what that I have already explained, right? So the task involved. This is the area. I'll move very quickly. Discussion with the decision maker, then interviewing with the industry experts, secondary data analysis, as well as the qualitative research, right? And regarding of the environment, right? So we have to find out what has been the information regarding of these variables, right? Past information, what has happened earlier, and whether that we have the focused in the sense this is with respect to the to the future happenings, right? That is considered to be focused. That is, we have to make about the decision based on the past information, of course, for the future period or for the future duration, right? At the same time, the resources and the constraints. So, what sort of resources organizations they are having, and what may some of the limitations that we may be facing about. Then about the objectives, right? So, for what is being the objectives of carrying out these tasks by the organization? The buying behavior. This is, of course, lately we will be the next section that we are going to study about is the buyer behavior. Then about the legal environment, economical environment. Likewise, that you can consider about the factors from the environment in connection with the problem that you are going to explore. Right? And also, again, we said the management decision problem have to be turned into a marketing research problem, right? So, what is the differences these two problem may have about briefer differences have been here denoted. Now, say if it is a management decision problem, as an example, if this is that, should a new product introduced, right? Uh, that is the management problem. But if you are turning this problem into a marketing research problem, then this problem will be converted in the marketing perspective, right? So that to be to determine the consumer preference and purchase intention for the proposed new product. So this is asking about whether there is a possibility of introducing the new product, right? So that is the management decision making or management decision problem. But of course, by that, as a marketer, we may not be able to get into the way of resolving it, right? So therefore, we have to really turn them into the marketing research problem. Now, another example here: should the advertising campaign be changed? Right? Now, if so, then what could be the marketing problem is to determine the effectiveness of the current advertising campaign. So, before that, we to turn or we to change, we have to really find out the effectiveness of the present advertising. And the third example here: should the price of the brand be increased? So that is the management decision problem. In case if it is a marketing research problem, then it would be to determine the price elasticity of the demand and impact of the sales and profits on the various level of price changes, right? So this is the connectivity within the price and the brand. So therefore, that here we have to find out the price elasticity, and by the price changes, whether it could have an impact on the sales and profits that we are having. Okay, right. So this is turning into marketing research problem. So we have got the marketing research problem, and as a second step, we said that we have to even in the definition, I also forgot to tell about from the broader statement that we have to get into a specific component. That is what earlier also I was referring. If you say sales degrees, that is of course a broader statement. But from that, you have to move into specific component. So you can ask, because of the competitor action, the sales have gone down, or whether by consumer preference, sales have gone down, right? Something like that. You have to make it as specific ones, right? And then we can move into the approaches, right? So we saw about these three categories of that. It can be the analytical frameworks and models. In the analytical frameworks, there are objective theoretical foundation. By theory, there are models that are provided with. We can have analytical model. By research, there are models that have been prescribed, right? By verbal models that we can have verbal models in the sense the variables are there and the variables are being discussed with the connection that they are having above. And the graphical models, as I said, dependent, independent variables even can be drawn into, and their impact onto the other variable, that is dependent variables, can be pointed out. And in some instances, where we take about the mathematical model, right? So mathematical model, as if you take about the regression, the dependent variable, that is y is equal to a plus bx. Right? A of course is the constant value, and b of course is the slope, and x of course the independent variable. So in that way, the formulas can be put forward, and we can come into an understanding. Right? Otherwise, we can have the research questions and hypotheses, which I was earlier specifying, and even the specific information we can move. Right? So we can ask about that. Right? And of course, when it comes to the second one, the research questions. So we said the research questions may be based on the components of the marketing research problem. So there may be different components, and based on that, the research questions can be asked, and from that we can have some conclusion that is uh, being formed into a hypothesis, right? So this is, of course, the second one. So as an example also, research question has been put forward in this way, are refined statements of the specific component of the problem, right? So this is, of course, what is meant by the research questions, right? So this is denoting about the particular problems to be specified into, right? Very specifically or very focusedly told, right? And hypothesis, of course, this is called to be an unproven statement, right? So that is what I was earlier, specifying had been the tentative conclusion, right? It is not the real conclusion, but it is a tentative conclusion, and the tentative conclusion can be checked. All right, now moving into the third one, that is research design. I will just move into the previous one. Now, this is what that we have been discussing about so far, about the problem definition, and we have also moved into the development of an approach to the problem. Right? Now, the third one is this research design. Right? So, what is a research design? Um, uh, what I meant earlier, that to be a blueprint or that to be a method or methodology on how the research would be conducted. Now, this is going to be a study. Now, we are going to study, right? The problem is this: we are going to find out whether by preference change something has happened to this organization, or by competitors' actions that something has gone wrong with us, or maybe by like environmental impact something has gone bad, or in some instances we'll say the economical crisis. We are not sure about what has been the causation. So we have to carry out a study. Now, how we have to carry out a study is given by the research design, right? So it is the framework on what would be the first activity, what would be the second, what would be the third. Likewise, that you can have a research design. Because in the research design, though that we have identified the research problem, right, and approaches, how that we can approach the problem as that. Beyond that, there is other things for us to consider. Now, how that we can identify the population, that is the study population through which that we are going to collect about the information. So study population as a whole that we won't be taking into consideration because it is very expensive and very difficult for us to approach all the study population. So instead of that, we take about the sample, right? So how that we are going to select about the sample, everything is going to be given in the research design. So what is our study population, and from the study population, how much of people that we are going to have it for our data collection, that is called as a sample, or the sample size as well as a sample. And from this sample, how the questionnaires, how that we are going to collect the information, whether it is going to be the questionnaire given, questionnaire administrated, or maybe by experiment, or it can be the observations. So many, what you call, way of data collections are there. So we have to really specify what is the way the data is going to collect it, right? So that is the source of data collection. And apart from that, out of the sample that we have selected, how that we are going to distribute the questionnaire, right? Or how that we are going to have the observation. Very particularly, this is related with the questionnaire distribution. Now, whether it is going to be simple, have you studied about the sampling? Students, have you studied about the sampling?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, no, then you may know about the probability sampling, non-probability sampling. What are the techniques that are coming out? All these things I need not to repeat because already you have an idea about, right? So these all things are being specified in the research design. Now, say to be whether we are going to apply the simple random sampling or stratified random sampling, or it may be the convenience sampling, snowball sampling. Many tools are there. So we have to really specify what are the way that we are going to distribute the question. And apart from that, what sort of analysis that we are going to carry out? So there you would have studied about the univariate analysis, bivariate analysis, multivariate analysis, isn't it? Students, univariate analysis, mostly it is the descriptive statistics, mean and standard deviation, median, mode. And if it is bivariate analysis, you happen to apply about the correlations and the simple regression study, that is between the two variables, the connectivity of it as well as the impact one variable having on the other variable. Multiple regressions or multiple variable is requiring from the multiple regression. So here, there you will have many independent variables. Out of these variables, which variables have a impact on the in the dependent variable that is driven through the multiple regression, right? So I need not spend more time on that, since that you would have got an idea. Of course, in your statistics, business statistics. So this is called for a design, right? Now, if you see about the research design, it can be the exploratory research design, where we have even divided about the research into two. No, one to be the exploratory research, and another one to be the conclusive research. So, if it is for exploratory research, then we have to go for the exploratory research design, and in case if it is a conclusive research, then we have to go for the conclusive research design. Okay? So here we can have in the conclusive about the descriptive research as well as the partial research, right? In the descriptive research, again, we can get the data as a cross-sectional design. That is, at one time that you collect about the information. Longitudinal design, of course. Oh, longitudinal design, of course, from the sample, you collect the data several times, not only one time. If it is one time, you say that to be a cross-sectional one. But if the data is being collected from the sample several times in the sense, suppose at this now, say that you are in the first year. So I have collected information when you had been in the first year. the same people, when they move into the second year, I'm collecting about the information regarding of the same variables, right? So that is what we call it as a longitudinal design. In case if I only collected the information when you had been in the first year, then we say that to be the cross-sectional design, right? Even this cross-sectional design, you can have a single cross-sectional design and multiple cross-sectional design. So single cross-sectional design in the sense, from one sample, you are collecting only one time. Here, there may be multiple samples, right? From that multiple sample, you collect the information at one time, right? So that is what called to be the multiple cross-sectional design, right? So these all things you will be even further studying in your third year under research methodology, and also third year you have SPSS package applied, right? So you will get a full idea about that. But anyway, for the marketing research as a section that we have to go through, I have given a brief idea about that. If you don't understand or anything, that you are free to ask from me. Right. So exploratory research, of course, we have already said that to be to coming into the idea about what sort of problem that the researcher is confronting with. It is almost the confirmation of the problem that has occurred, right? So almost that you are confirming the problem. So because without knowing about the problem, that we cannot have a conclusive research, no. So we have to really establish about the problem. So most of the time, in order to establish the problem, the exploratory research is being conducted with. So and also this qualitative research is most of the time applied at the exploratory research, or qualitative research is helping to have about the problem established with. So that is exploratory research. And of course, there are many things that you may get from the exploratory research. You may be able to have about the background of the particular problem understood, right? So that is also there. And you may be able to define about the terms also, because the different, what do you call, sentences or different words would be used about. So therefore that we can have about the definitions of the terms that are being very much used, right? And also it will help to clarify the problems and the hypothesis, because that is where that we formulate through the literature, that you formulate what has been already, right, identified, that to be applicable here also. And also to establish about the research priorities also, you may be using about this exploratory research, right? In the exploratory research, most of the time we analyze about the secondary data, as I have already told you, right? In order to understand about the problem, you can use about the secondary data. Sometimes there can be pilot studies also carried out. We are not going in a full-fledged of collecting the data from all the people or from the sample, but we have some of the respondents selected with, most of the time that we have it as 30 numbers, right, in order to apply about the statistical tools, right? So we carry out the pilot study. So it is not a full-fledged study, it is about a pilot study, that is like a trial, right? Then we may also go for the qualitative research. So in the qualitative research, these are the main techniques that are being used. So you can go for a depth interviews and also the focus group. So of course, lately we've been studying about what is focus group, depth interviews also. Then the survey of the expert. Now the other one to be the conclusive research design, right? So These are really formulated in order to assist about the decision maker in order to have the best course of action that they can take for the problem that they are facing about, right? So that is we are able to uh, identify. Then the descriptive research, right? So this is also a conclusive research category. You can put it into a conclusive research, right? So here, what happens is most of the time that you try to find out what you call the nature or the characteristics, right? Or it may be the functions that you are finding out. Now, say for an instance, if like earlier example regarding finding out the satisfaction level, right? So now from 30 respondents, you are collecting the data regarding of the satisfaction level, and you find out most of the people to be marked between 2 and 3, so that to be lower to a moderate satisfaction level, right? So that is what we call it as a descriptive. By mean value that we can describe most of the people are having about a moderate satisfaction. Most of the people are having a lower satisfaction, something like that. So that is where the descriptive research is being um, applied with, right? So most and even this descriptive research or the outcome of this descriptive research will help us to get answers as who are the consumers, what that they are purchasing about, where that they are purchasing about, when that they are purchasing, and why that they are purchasing. For these type of questions, which is most oftenly right raised in the marketing context, can be answered by the descriptive research. And also, even it would be a good study to apply uh, in order to study about the market share, the sales, and also about the image, in the sense that it can be the branding, product usage, distribution, pricing, whatever. Right. So for this, it is very productive to have about the descriptive research. Right. So the methods of descriptive research, you can see, it can come from the secondary data, right, and about the surveys, and also by panels, and the observation, as well as through the internet nowadays that we are having about. So these are the ways in which that you can have about the information collected, and the descriptive what you call methods can be used over. Okay, so for that we are applying. And to talk about the cross-sectional design, so here we said the collection of information from any given sample of population. All right. So if it is cross-sectional, it is happening only once. Right. So most frequently it is used in the descriptive design for the reason that where at one time or at once only that you are collecting about the information. And as I have said, it can be it can be a single cross-sectional design and multiple cross-sectional design, which that we have already came across, right? So single, this is of course one sample of respondents is drawn from the target population. The information is obtained from this sample once, right? So that is that. The multiple cross-sectional, right, where two or more samples of respondents can be identified, but from each of the samples, the data is collected only once. But multiple cross-sectional, of course, that we are having more than one sample. So that is the difference between the single cross-sectional as well as the multiple cross-sectional, right? And the cohort analysis is also there, where that we are trying to assess about the change that is totally happening. Now, say for an instance, you being in the first year, and regarding of your performance from the subjects that you have taken, and being on the second year with the same group that we are going to assess, like it is a almost a longitudinal one, right? So the same people, that's very important. Not at the second year we are selecting about other people who have not been earlier involved. So, but here we are going with the same people, and third year also with the same people, fourth year also we go with the same people. That is called as a coherent analysis. So that way also that we may be able to have our research, right? And longitudinal research, of course, I said this is with a fixed sample of population measured repeatedly, right? Same sample, but again and again that you are measuring about or you're collecting about the information, right? And sometimes even it is being called as a panel, right? So panel of data, or it is called a panel of data. Each of the time from the same people or from the same company, you are collecting about the sales, right? For the continuous 5 years, repeatedly, it is taking place. The causal research, of course, we find out the dependent and the independent variable, right? To understand what is affecting what, right? So maybe it can take place through the experimental approach, but of course here in the social sciences also we are having the variables to be identified as independent and dependent variables. Dependent variable, of course, is the problematic variable, and independent variables, of course, the causations for the problematic variable. So those are independent and these are dependent. In if you have the model in the form of independent and dependent, then of course we can apply this causal research, right? So that is also applicable in the marketing research, right? So some sort of a comparison that you can see between the exploratory, descriptive, as well as the causal. So exploratory, the objective is to find out the insight, but descriptive will be describing most of the time about the market characteristics. For that purpose, we are using about the descriptive one. And causal, of course, will tell us about the cause and the effect, right? What is the cause and what is the effect of that, right? Characteristics of the exploratory flexible because we cannot confine into a certain way, like time to time according to the answers as well as the respondents, what you call their answers or their response that we have to change, right? So this process is said to be the flexible one. Descriptive is here we are researching about or we are testing about the hypothesis, so that the tentative answers and we from the collected information trying to establish whether the same relationship or same impact is also driven by, right? And here the causal manipulating of one or more independent. So by changing about the independent variables, by differing or by changing about the independent variables, we are trying to find out what would be the effect for the dependent variable, right? So hypothesis, not very vague, right? We don't get hypothesis at the exploratory one, but propositions are being established when it comes to the exploratory research, right? Of course, don't worry, these are like more advanced one, but anyway, if you come across, you must be able to understand. And descriptive one is tentative and speculative, right? So we are uh, we by the sample we are getting about the results, and that results is going to be interpreted for the study population, for the whole population, right? So it is tentative. And causal, of course, it is going to be very specific for the reason that we are manipulating the independent, right, variables, and by their manipulation, what has been the effect that we have found out. So therefore, it would be very specific. Only for that situation, these results will be real. So you cannot infer that to the whole population, right? So that is the limitation the causal research is having about. So here it is a comparative study, and regarding of samples also, more often in the exploratory there would be small sample taken about, but descriptive you go for a larger sample, and in the partial one it can be of course not to be very much depending on the sample, but of course the situations can be explored. The situations can be explored. Then the generalizability here cannot be generalized, because from the smaller population only you are studying about. Here it can be generalized, right? And here also can be generalized depending on the sample, right? So now if the sample size is very much higher at the partial research, you can have a generalization, but most often the descriptive statistics we may able to generalize to the population. Cost here it is low, medium, and high, and time also exploratory. It's not to be the very quickest one, but anyway, since that we are dealing with a smaller population or smaller sample, it would be possible for us to find out or to arrive at a particular conclusion. And sometimes regarding of the descriptive one, it may be moderate, right, time wise, not to say about lengthier or not to say that to be the longest, but causal, of course, it is going to be longest, because we have to change one variable at a time, right, and find out the results what we are getting about. Okay, right. So then coming into the sampling, right, just for us, for you to have about an understanding. First, that you have to get into the population, where that you are going to carry about the research, who are going to be the respondents, right? So that is defining about the population, and going about the sampling frame. Uh, we out of the defined population, we must have a mechanism to design or define about the sampling framework, right? These are the people who are going to be included with. So there have to be a certain system. Now, say like the names are being written in an alphabetic order, or the people are being identified about by their what you call house number, something like that, right? So we have to have about the sampling framework. This is the population through which that we are going to select, right? And sampling techniques that you have to use, that we have known with probability, non-probability sampling techniques, like a simple random sampling can be used, stratified, that you name it, right? and determine the sample size, right, out of the population that you have to come to a conclusion of a sample size. There are nowadays, those earlier days, of course, it has been very difficult, but now, even in the through web like internet sites, you may be getting about the sample size calculator, right? So through the sample size calculator, you may be able to get about the sample size and sampling process that you may execute with. Right. So, this has right. So this has been uh, there are this is been the techniques that we are using about. So we have come up to the level of the third one, the sample design. But also it is equivalently wanted is the marketing research proposal. So in the proposal, right, we have to really specify at the beginning itself, uh, right, what is our research problem, what is our conceptual framework, what are the hypotheses that we are going to, what are the research methodology that we are going to use, right? So before, I mean, at final only you will get about the research report, but in order to conduct about the research, you have to have a research proposal, right? It is only a proposal, how that you are going to conduct about the research. So from the research design, you will be able to write about the marketing research proposal, right? So that is also one that to be very important. And this is how the format will be looking at or will be look like, right? The what you call the contents that has to be included. So executive summary is there that would be based on all the following from the second to the ninth, right? So what are the things that have been discussed will be taken as a summarized form in the executive summary. Background is also given there. Then the problem definitions and the objectives, then how that you are approaching the problem, the research design, right, and how that the data is going to be collected and analyzed, and what is the way that the reporting will take place, and also what is the cost involved and the time where that you have to produce it, right? So there may be a Gantt chart also included in the proposal, and also some appendices, which is the what do you call, some information to be annexed, right? So that also would be there in the proposal. Okay, right. So this is about the MIS as well as the DSS, decision support system, as well as the marketing information system. And we have to know how that the marketing information system is different from the decision support system. In the marketing information system, right, we are having about a formalized procedures in order to collect, that is to generate, analyze, store and distribute the information to the decision maker. So that is of course the MIS, but the decision support system, this is an information system, right, which is already existing, which enables the decision maker to interact directly with the database and the analysis model. So already the collected information is there, where that it is up to them to get it from it, because it is a system that has already been collected with, or it is been established with, and we have to merely get it. So that is really the whole system it reverse about. But here, of course, the marketing information system, this is connected with the marketing research and the subsequently the information that is available with, right? So we have to a certain extent, understand how that these two systems are different. Okay, more in what do you call in an abstracted form. MIS, of course, we have the structured problem, but through DSS, we are dealing or we try to resolve with the unstructured problems, right? So, for structured problems, MIS can be applied, but if it is an unstructured problem, then the DSS have to be applied, right? So here we use about the reports, but here under DSS, we are using about the models for the reason that we have to have a connectivity established with between and among the variables. And information displaying is restricted, but of course here we are having user-friendly interactions because the situation is complicated. Therefore, we cannot limit, right, things because we are not certain about some of the outcomes that is coming out. So therefore, it has to be very friendly, and people have to know what is taking place. And MIS, of course, can improve the decision making by having about the raw data or clearing raw data. But these DSS, of course, will have the decision making of understanding what if, right? What if analysis in the sense. Now, say if this is the situation, then what would be the consequences of that? Now, say for instance, if the price or if the inflation goes up, then what would be the result of that, right? If there is a limitation in the expansion of the market, then what would be the consequences of that, right? So this is in the format of what if this happens. So the results that is going to be because of the reason specified. So in this way, that we may be able to distinguish the marketing information system from the decision support system. And finally, moving into the ethics, right? So, what is meant by ethics? Some of the moral principles that we have to apply when that we are conducting about the marketing research, because this is involved with collecting about the information. So we have to make the respondents more convenient, right, in order to answer for the questions or answer for the information that you are searching about, right? So under the circumstances, very forcefully that you cannot make them to do it about, right? Or you cannot quick them, right, to answer about the questions. So these sort of what we call the ethicalities have to be applied, right? So the ethical and the moral principles, more or less, the moral principles is what that we are referring for ethics. Then this has to be really applied when the research is being conducted, right? So just if you take about the research conduction, three important parties have been involved. One to be the client, right, who sponsors the research project. So, because of some organization, we have to conduct about the research, right? So, that is the client who has given the task. The supplier who designs and executes the research, right? Sometimes we may not be able to do all the requirement wanted to carry out about the research. So, some of the activities that we may be conducting, some activities that we have to outsource. So for outsourcing that activity, there will be a supplier. So the supply is also one party there, and also the respondents who providing about the information to whom that we are getting about the information. So since these three parties are involved, you have to. I mean, they are in persons, right? So uh, uh, they are, I mean, how dealing with them has to be really design over. And when you're designing, the moral principles or the ethicality have to be really looked, right? And uh, how that you can emphasize on that you are practicing about the ethical principles is that you promote the aim of the researcher, right? So why this research is really conducted, what is the purpose, what is the reason, why it is important, if not what will happen or something like that. And you promote the value. So from the information collected or the information that is going to be collected, how valuable it is going to be, right? Maybe it would be also benefiting the respondents, right? If such information is collected. Now, suppose unemployment level is being collected, the collected data will be usable, or the collected data will benefit even the people who are responding, unemployed people, it would be benefiting, right? And accountable to public, right? By this research, uh, we tend to provide some solutions to the public concern, or maybe some issues to be resolved by the public, and also how much of public support that we are going to get, right? So this, of course, regarding of ethical issues, right? So there can be marketing ethics, where that we have to apply about the morals to the behavior related to the exchange environment. That is where the interactions which are going to take place, and the moral standards. Of course, this is also we have to make the people to understand what is right and what is wrong, right? So we have to promote what is really right. And even there can be ethical dilemmas, right? So we are in the situation that we have to choose from the alternative right ways. So the ways when we are choosing, you have to be concerned over the ethical implications, right? So that also is a very important aspect. And finally, you can see some sort of a limitation that the marketing research can have, right? So it may not provide about the solution in some instances, right? And this is not exactly a science. That is, it may not like go through a systemized way, right? And by time there may be a limitation, and also there may be findings which are erroneous, right? And of course, uh, for the reason of forecasting about the future, the reality may not be uh, accordance to the forecasted data. And inexperienced researchers may involve in the research activities, and also there may be a narrow conception, right? Rather than looking the problem as a broader way, there would be a limitation, right? So now even in the process itself that we can understand, we have got the general problem, and again that general problem is being broken into components. So when you are breaking about the into components, we are sometimes narrowing down the scope, right? So that may be the limitation that we would be facing. Okay, so this is what we had to learn uh, about this particular section, that is on marketing research, information collection, and the usage of that. and the process that is involved in collecting about the information. So, what are the techniques and how it can be applied over, and what is possible for us to execute with. Okay, so this is what. Anything you want to ask from me? So since the section has been completed, tomorrow we have at 10:30, no? Are we having at 10:30 tomorrow? Am I? Oh, yes, ma'am. Why you can't open your mouth? Why you all are putting in the chat? Just say yes. Okay, at least some are trying to put it in the chat, but I will prefer you all to open your mouth and speak. Okay, so tomorrow 10:30 I will start with the next section. That would be the fifth section. Okay, then thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Recording